Good evening and welcome to the Nightfall in Amsterdam. Tonight we're joining a family of sorts, although a diverse family. We'll be joining, as we start our evening, Astrid and, I'm sure I'll mispronounce this more than once, but Eir Sigurdsson. The two of them, while sisters, differ greatly. However, both of them have continued even into their young adult life to reside on the Guru Sept, the Sept of the Frozen Forest, which is located in the Amsterdam forest, sort of in the city. Unusual for many septs, but the fact that it was here prior to the city truly existing is certainly a factor. Well, they reside there, and indeed, while the Sept totem is, in fact, a Fenris spirit, the alpha of the Sept is a silver fang. That in and of itself is somewhat unusual. But the fact of the matter is that, well, the Sigurdssons have resided on the Sept for many generations. They have not held any leadership for quite some time, nor indeed have any of the Get had any roles of major significance. While there is a Get tail singer who has obtained some rank, even she is looked at slightly disfavorably. To that end, the Sigurdsson sisters, and indeed most of the Get, find themselves with a little more privacy and space on the Sept. And as we join them tonight, it's relatively quiet. It's a cooler night, and they have some time to themselves.
I'm going to assume that Eir hasn't been back all that long either. But, she is probably just chilling by a fire, being as it's cooler. Kind of meditating, because that's what she as a theurge does.
So Astrid will be sitting at the fire, not really disturbing her sister, but watching her carefully and with a certain amount of envy in her eyes. She's dressed in a simple blue gown with white trimming. Her red hair hangs over her shoulder, and if you look closely, you can see that there's a large amount of birds in the trees around them, and they all seem to be focusing intently on Astrid.
Yeah, Eir kind of just wears a typical jeans and tennis shoes and a flannel shirt while she's sitting there. On her hands, you will has a frost rune hanging from the top of the moon as tattoos on her hands. And she seems just kind of be whispering prayers and thanks in Guru tongue quietly as she sits there. It's almost under her breath. She meditates.
I will have need a perception alertness. And I will.
From both of us?
Correct.
Alright. Being as I'm meditating, death.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So I'll just let you roll for me, Dejon,
Yep.
and just I'll trust whatever the result is.
Oh, I was,
Helps if I hit the right.
yeah, I was gonna say, 18 successes is a lot of successes for 6 dice.
Helps if I enter the whole code.
Right.
Try that again. It's also very hard to get successes when the difficulty is 6 and you're rolling a d6.
Right.
Alright. So Air had 4 successes and Astrid had 1. So possibly because you're meditating and kind of have your senses a little more opened up to the world around you, you hear footfalls first. But shortly after that, Astrid, you would hear them as well, as sounds like a 4-legged animal, probably some sort of canine, and a person are approaching the two of you.
When she stops meditating, when she hears it, and her head snaps in the direction of the sound. She
Astrid
kind
turns
of
her head.
sniffs the air.
Astrid turns her head as well. Perhaps a little bit less abrupt than her sister. She's used to people walking through these woods, so it doesn't alarm her necessarily.
And as you guys turn, neither of you would recognize the man who's approaching. The one who's pictured there. And he does have a larger black wolf at his side.
I don't think I have the proper.
Astrid stands, but takes a step back so that she's behind her sister, giving her sister prominence.
Air kind of eyes both him and the dog up, or the wolf, and sniffs the air just to get her bearings on the situation.
You would recognize that he has certainly some degree of uh, pure breed, that he's in some way connected to your tribe, slightly stronger than your sisters.
Okay.
And he kind of approaches you guys as if he recognizes you. As he does, the wolf kind of circles out, back away from you guys as if watching for anyone to have followed.
Well, being a
Astrid,
guru, I know that wolves travel in packs. So I kind of just take the time to scan the surrounding area.
Astrid tilts her head to the side and smiles friendly, but doesn't think to offer a greeting before Io speaks.
Air totally has resting bitch face. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of a permanent feature. But before she speaks, she kind of scans the area to see if there's anyone else around because, like I said, she knows wolves travel in packs.
You do not see anyone else, just the two of them. As he gets closer, and he will stop in front of you, and he looks at both of you, and he says, "You two match the descriptions, but you are older than what I expected."
And what kind of shakedown is this? She raises an eyebrow.
He turns and looks over his shoulder, and he says, "I knew your parents. I know more of your family because I'm a distant cousin. But more important,
Astrid said, shoots up and said, "You know our parents?" And almost immediately she realizes she has spoken out of turn, lowers her head and says, "I'm sorry."
more importantly,
Don't wait for me if you have questions. Seriously, she looks at Astrid.
I've dealt with those such as the Magnusons. We've crossed paths more than once.
Sounds like a fun experience. She kind of, like there's sarcasm heavy in her tone.
Do you know what happened to our parents? Are they alive?
I do not know the details, only that there were more pieces involved than what people have been led to believe.
Okay.
I also know that your parents aren't the first Sigurdsons to have vanished from this sept.
We are the only Sidersons I have ever known, but To be fair, I am quite young.
Others of our line have gone missing, such as
Well, there are those who would not mind seeing this family disappear from the sept altogether.
I'm sure you're right. Though I can't imagine who. She kind of crinkles her nose.
And these same parties, should they see the two of you, one recently returned, the other constantly present and watching, and the fact that there's another in this city, might perceive that as a threat to their position and their plans.
What plans are those? They want to take us out because I'm pretty sure they've already screwed all of our family and our tribe out of most things here, and it's our home.
And if one wanted to get their tribe back into favor, one might need a scapegoat to offer up.
A scapegoat?
Point the finger, prove your loyalty by exposing someone else.
Pretty sure I took out a traitor to this sept before I left.
And then you left. And while you
Not
may
by my
have
own choice.
perhaps not. But you've been gone. How do you suppose that they spun that? If you were playing politics and trying to angle yourself into favor,
when it became obvious that I would not change, I was consigned to a life without renown. I am no threat to anyone here, nor should they think of me as such.
he chuckles and he says, "You don't suppose you're a threat, but you have powers they do not, powers they don't understand, and you're from a family that they don't trust or have chosen to use as a sacrificial lamb."
I know some.
He
I have
turns
no intention to sit around and make me one either.
and gestures and he says, "I was forced to flee for having magic far less potent than yours. And I was never even believed that I would change.
Her eyes sparkle and an eyebrow raises. And what sort of magics do you speak of?
Simple sorceries, nothing more. And while I've watched, I have more importantly learned. And while I do not know much, I know someone who knows more and who can offer you sanctuary. I'm not saying do not claim this sept. I'm not saying abandon it, but perhaps do not rely on it to be the security and safety of home that it should be.
How else do
Astrid
we
looks,
have to go?
I go wherever my sister goes. If she stays here, I stay here. If she goes and she would have me, I would go with her.
And he'll kind of turn and look then at Air.
Well, where is this place you propose we call back up, for lack of better wording? Running doesn't really help our case.
He turns and he says, "Oh, we won't be running. In fact, we'll even be in the same city."
An eyebrow. Go on.
He turns and says, "I suggest we head out before we discuss too much. There are those who can listen without us seeing them."
Give me a second. She holds up her hand. And she is going to pop into the Umbra.
Okay.
And she's going to look around for some spirits. She does have a spirit magnet, by the way. Not to mention the spirit heritage, so she's looking to see what's out and around her.
Give me. You stepped over there, so it would be a perception alertness.
The dog, he jumped on me. 3.
There's a number of almost old Viking spirits type individuals standing around you. Quite a few bird spirits in the area as well.
Okay.
And with 3,
So, okay.
you would also notice, and it's just barely within range that you can even glimpse it. There's a spirit that looks like that.
Like the Grim Reaper? So that is.
It's definitely a dark robed humanoid, and there is a black wolf spirit at its side.
Interesting. Does it look like it could be a reflection of our buddy here? Or is it
No.
elsewhere? Okay.
Elsewhere. In no way appears related.
She will approach the spirit.
As you start to get closer, it starts to fade into the distance.
I roll a intelligence and what spirit lore?
Okay.
Try to figure out what it is, or, anything about that type of spirit, whatever it is.
All right.
Any particular difficulty or just standard?
Just a standard would be fine.
Courtesy of a 1. I hate you ones. So, no, nothing.
It's
that
not
kind of-
something you've seen before, even at your time elsewhere.
Right. So she's going to keep that in her mind. And look to the bird spirits that are about.
Okay.
And call to them and say, "Are you friends of my sister?"
They kind of cackle almost like a laugh, like they're amused.
Are they crows?
Many of them.
So no, not friends of your sister.
They're not? Okay. Well. Are you friends of that? And she points in the direction where the figure disappeared to.
One of them, a larger one, turns and takes off. And as the rest of them start to lift up, you hear kind of a rumble of thunder.
I'm going to assume they're friends of Grandfather Thunders. Are they storm crows?
The larger one appeared to be, yes.
Gotcha. Interesting. So how many of them take off at that point?
A good chunk of them, certainly. And, well, there are other birds left behind. They just kind of flutter a bit.
Well, she's going to put it to him this way. Are you friend or foe of my family?
And one of them sweeps down. And it's more of a, as it gets closer, you see it's a hawk. And it lands and it says, "Not all of us stand with the arrogant ones who would call themselves kings. We are not all cousins of Falcon."
And where do you stand then? If not with them. How do I prove you speak truth?
And the hawk looks at you and says, "Because I was there with your sister when no one else was."
Very well. And what can I offer you to keep watch to ensure that we are not followed?
And she the hawk kind of ruffles its feathers, cackles a little bit. This one's more of a amused, and it says, "Do you truly think that a messenger who can sneak onto a sept did not come prepared for such eventualities already?"
I make no assumptions.
He looks and kind of turns and looks at you again and says, "The ancient cousin will hide your path as you leave. I will watch instead and see who attempts to find you."
Very well. And for shimonage, a rabbit, blood.
This one does not have a price because your family's continued existence is payment for me.
She raises an eyebrow. You really don't like them, do you?
I know that your family has a role to play, and that my role will be diminished if your family is not able to fulfill theirs. I believe your sister waits,
You are correct.
and while the ancient cousin has had many years, he has still not learned patience.
Very well. I'll not keep them waiting. Though I may come back and ask about the cloaked figure.
Right. And as you get back, the gentleman has uh, 3 black walnuts in his hand.
His hand, sorry, kind of.
What's that? You kind of cut out for a
You
minute.
kind of, yeah, you cut out too. That's why I said he has what in his hand?
3 black walnuts.
I'm sorry I kept you both waiting. I had to take certain measures to ensure safety.
What did you see, sister?
I spoke to some spirits. Much more I would rather not discuss here.
Astronauts. So, do we go?
He'll take.
Sure, once he's done playing with his nuts.
He cracks one open, and you find that the meat of the walnut is also black. And he hands it to you.
To who?
He hands one to each of you.
She holds it up to her face and looks at it.
He takes the third one, cracks it open, and he eats it.
Sorry. Eric looks kind of skeptical, but seeing the others eat theirs, she eats hers.
Seeing Air eat hers, Asher eats hers.
And it kind of gets a little bit darker. He turns and heads towards the woods, and as he does, he gestures back. Pulls out a small dagger, just slightly, so that you can see the silver of the blade, the metallic of the blade.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Keep an eye on this. If you lose sight of me, there will be no trail to follow."
Very well.
And then he will lead you guys out of the forest.
Astrid
Eric
follows.
will follow.
She looks back for a moment, sort of regretting that she didn't have time to pack, but realizes that there'll be no opportunity and continues following.
You notice that Air didn't take anything besides herself either.
Astrid will be at somewhat of a disadvantage unless she can find similar objects that she needs.
As you guys get out, a smaller vehicle pulls up, 4-door car, and he gets in to the passenger seat. He gestures to the back seats, and he says, "It's much quicker than walking."
That's fair. She'll hop in, but she's totally trying to catch a peek at who's driving.
Just it doesn't look like anyone special, and as you guys get in, the guy with you says, who you're with says, "Yeah, you can charge it to my account." And then over his shoulder, he says, "Technology has made it so much easier to get rides than the old cabs."
I'm sure it has.
I wouldn't know. I'm unusual for someone my age in that I find technology rather distasteful.
Yeah, it's not my favorite thing ever, but this, need something done quick. Get a hold of somebody in a pinch. It does its job.
It's a relatively short drive, about 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
And the car pulls up to a small park.
All right.
And the gentleman you're with gets out. And he says, "Well, this is our stop."
Astrid cautiously gets over the tower, looks around.
Air's gonna get out and also take a look-see around.
It's a relatively small forested park. You guys have probably heard of it, having been kind of raised in the area, but it's not one you visit a lot. There's noise of Liegenbos.
Okay.
And as he pays the driver, or signs the driver's phone or whatever, and says, "This one is a good one to disappear in as well." Much more subtle, however. As he starts walking down one of the trails.
Air is going to follow.
Astrid follows. Her eyes are up in the trees looking for her constant companions, beginning to feel a bit nervous, but knowing that they will warn her if anything is afoot.
And she's going to look over at Amsterdam. You seem to have some friends that are going to cover our tracks so no one knows where we went. Knows where we went.
She smiles.
They seem to take interest in this family.
Oh,
They didn't fully specify what, only that if we succeed, they succeed, more or less, in their purpose. So,
what sort of spirit did you speak to, sister?
a hawk.
Astrid smiles. That would make sense.
But there were other spirits.
Oh,
Ravens. Crows. A shadowy figure who disappeared.
a shadowy figure, you say?
When I tried to
Well,
approach. But when I
I know
asked
nothing
about
about that.
them,
But
no
ravens
idea.
and crows are, of course, the companions of the Allfather.
Yes. Crows specifically are also of another tribe's brood.
Yes,
I intend to look further into this matter. But for now, we're here.
yes, here we are. And me without my tools.
As you guys continue down the trail, the man you're following kind of turns off the main path, and he heads deeper into some woods that kind of look like what you see here. Larger trees have been felled, and there's a fire ahead of you as well, a larger fire.
Hair will kind of straighten up as she proceeds forward.
She follows close behind.
She's also going to kind of sniff the air. She is obviously expecting there to be the smell of fire and smoke, but to see if she picks up any other smells.
Well, in addition to, if you're correct, there's fire and smoke, as well as the pure breed of the one you're with, but you also smell another pure breed, and you can't see who or what because it's beyond the kind of like directly behind the fire from you. But you can also
So the fire kind of
blocks your
covers it
view.
a little
Right.
bit.
As you guys approach, but you can also smell silver.
Goody. if you've led us into a death trap, you're first to go.
Psst. Psst.
He gestures and he says, for those who don't know our family's history, I realize this might be a bit uncomfortable. Trust that family runs deeper even than you think.
All right. If this is family, why the heck do I feel like I'm about to be murdered? She's obviously referencing the smell of the silver.
You hear a chuckle from behind the flames.
Oh, murder is funny now.
I don't believe Freya would let me walk into a dangerous situation, my sister. I'm confused as well, but I don't believe there is any reason to fear.
And you see this gentleman step out from behind the flames. And he says, the idea of dying isn't necessarily amusing. Nor is the idea of a death trap. However, when I met your great-grandfather, he said almost the exact same thing.
She kind of looks at this guy. Great grandfather. Sorry, but you don't look that old.
He gives you a grin and you notice fairly prominent fangs. And he says,
Oh, shitting me. And she takes a step back.
perhaps not. And he gestures to your guide and he says, but Angrim here is my great-great-grandnephew. And he doesn't look 100 years old either. And the guy was leading you kind of like scratches his beard and he looks and he says, has it been 100 already?
Well, don't I feel like a baby? She kind of half laughs. Though she's still kind of standoffish.
Astrid was confused.
And he says, well, I suppose now that you're here, there's no sense in holding the magic quite so tightly. And he kind of turns and almost like he's letting out a long breath. And you hear a low wind kind of whisper through everything. And here you would realize you are standing within a bond. You're inside it.
Her eyes just kind of grow big.
And he says, you realize it can be a little bit unnerving. You realize that the one he called Angrim, the one who guided you guys here, is almost like a little kid at a festival. He's bouncing up and down like he's eager for something.
Are you high?
And this guy chuckles and he says, "No, he's he gets like this because it's become amusing to see the outcome. He's seen it a couple times and he knows what's coming."
Oh, so we're here for his entertainment?
And he chuckles and he says, "No, you're here because there are those who would use the name Sigurdsson as a curse. There are those who would use members of the Sigurdsson family as pawns and sacrifices to further their own political gain. And there are those who have persecuted and judged and tormented and suppressed members of the Sigurdsson family for well over 6 or 7 centuries. I lose count now and again."
Yeah, we do tend to be the butt of everybody.
He says, "Well, you see, that's what happens when people don't always agree with a decision. And that's what happens when outsiders decide to start whispering. And a leader is perhaps a little too honest, a little too trusting, and he doesn't act on those whispers."
I wrote meaning.
He takes his sword and he sticks it point down into the ground next to you, or in front of you, rather. And he
She
says,
eyes up.
"It's what happens when a brother refuses to kill brother, and that is used as leverage to overthrow a faithful and just Jarl. When he is supplanted by an arrogant Saxon,
Her eyes kind of dart between the other three. So she's you are the cause of all of this.
He chuckles and he says, only it were that simple. No,
I didn't say it was that simple, but
you stand in the forest of eternal night. Here, not, also known to some of us as grandmother, rules. It is she who gave me shelter when I was taken by one of the leeches. And you can see his golden eyes just fill with fire. And he says, my brother was a Jarl. And he was righteous, fought with honor and glory, conquered those who challenged him. And I was supposed to be chosen to stand with him. It had been deemed that one day I would change as well, and I would stand next to him. And even before I had changed, I remembered hearing the spirits and speaking with them. But that was taken from me. And I thought it was taken from me simply by a leech. And I tore him to shreds for it. But the problem is, it was not taken from me as a punishment, though it felt that way for many years. It was taken from me because my brother, righteous, honorable, always seeking glory in battle, filled with fire and fury, he did not know how to rule the night. He did not know how to play in the shadows, how to make the puppets dance. And Not saw that. And she realized that my place was not at my brother's side, but it was literally in his shadow. And she envisioned, not alone, but with others, with these other great spirits, those who had chosen the Get to rule. And they envisioned a kingdom ruled by one Jarl by day and another by night, always together as back to back. But the arrogant Saxons in their silver-headed crown and those conniving, twisted, manipulative. He kind of trails off and he says, there were Guru from other tribes, from the island to the north, from the mountains far to the south, near the Baltic. And they plotted together. When they discovered that what I had become, they demanded my brother kill me. And he refused and instead gave me the sword of a king, which you see before you. And for that he was damned.
Astrid leans into air and whispers into her ear as lowly as she can and says, "What would the Sept think if they knew we were here treating with worm spawn?"
They they wouldn't be too thrilled, but these are also the individuals who wish to take the very thing that our family built from us.
He turns and looks into the fire and he says, "They shamed my brother and cast him out."
Which is what they're doing to us now, are they not, sister?
Yes,
Trying their damnedest too.
even when I failed to change, they did not throw me out. I would hope, even in our lowered position, that there must be a place for us.
You were all too quick to throw me out when I changed. Shout out to you. Though I ended a traitor to the Sept, they still wanted me out. I'm curious, I have to admit, what stories they told. Because I came in after my first change and I was gone the day after.
The man behind the man by the fire chuckles and he says, "Does it really matter? Of course they cast you out. They had to." He turns and he says, "I am not well versed in the threads and prophecies. That is not my magic. It never has been. But even I have followed the gist of prophecy that when a daughter of Sigurd was born, when she was touched by Gaia and took forth her legacy, she could reclaim that which was once his." Now we looked at your mother. In fact, we wondered if somewhere was there a lost thread. She was get through and through. She was pure. She was from the area. But no matter how far back we traced it, there was no lineage directly to Sigurd. But your father came from a lineage. "15 generations of males directly descended from Sigurd. And not one had a daughter, both pureborn and changing."
Huh. She kind of glances at Astrid.
Astrid looks back at her and smiles. A little bit of a proud look in her eyes.
He turns and he says, pieces of these prophecies were lost, but we know that the daughter of Sigurd would not reclaim alone. But when she went forth, she would have support of gods and goddesses alike, and of Get, even outside the family. But there would be those Get as well that would blame. The tribe did not lose their position on the sept because of the actions of the, and he almost sneers and he says, the Fangs and the Shadow Lords. They lost their position because they lost the support of their own spirits. Because they did not stand with their own. They broke faith with their Jarl. They shamed themselves. But they would blame Sigurd for it, rather than accept their own dishonor. And they would believe that they can somehow claw back a shred of their own glory by pandering to these outsiders. He gestures to the sword, and he says, I was given a weapon of a Jarl, unlike any that had been given before. Among the Silverfangs, they call them claves. Some even call them grand claves. But it was forged for kinfolk. It was forged for one who did not change because it had been deemed by grandmother herself and enacted through the manipulation of a leech that I never would. And so my brother had a blade fashioned that I might wield its full power. And he wielded its twin. And just as a blade is a long fang, so too is a spear.
That it is.
Two fangs, two Jarls. This was the vision. This was their goal. And yes, I would have my own lineage through my blood and abilities. My own undying children that would stand, but would not side and would not pander to the leeches and their petty games. And I learned how to bring some of my sorceries with me into this next life. But none of us envisioned magic such as your sisters. In our day, such things existed, but so much more rarely. We were runecasters, wind callers, not workers. We worked simple paths and methods as Angrim does now, as I do now with my blood. But your sister in our time was something different. Some believe they were touched by the elves or the gods themselves or spirits. But they did not need a rite and ritual. They did not need a prescribed method. They did not follow the runes. They wrote them. They did not read prophecy. They created it. They twisted it. They reshaped it. And now, here we are. In the few pieces we have left of this prophecy, point to one who stands before me. And next to her stands one who shapes prophecy. Two siblings. One who changed and one who never will. I do not give you shelter on this sept because it is not mine to give. Not shelters you here. Grandmother's embrace has gathered you.
Astrid lowers her eyes and says, "You speak of someone who can shape prophecy, but I must say, this is not me. I am still so unlearned. I still have so much progress to make."
Growing is part of life. Part of what we all do with time.
He looks and he says, when my brother gave me that sword, I was not the wolf-eyed Jarl. I did not understand the magics or the spirits either. I had not yet begun to fathom what 700 years of watching and following and tracking down the missing branches of my brother's family would be like. I did not understand what it would be like to touch pieces of this world and the next, and to touch them in ways that none of our kind ever had before. And you stand in the same position, at the edge of being thrust into a role that you have no grasp of what it will mean or how you will do it, but with the capability to do things that none of us have ever done before.
Air just kind of smiles at her sister.
There are things I would need, things I have left at my sept.
There are always things we need. There are always tools. There are always methods. There's always more. This is a home if you wish it. This is not a prison. There are paths within this sept that can only be found by those touched by grandmother. Tonight, that you might come here once, Angrim shared with you the black walnuts, blessed by grandmother herself. But if you choose this place, you no longer need such talismans, for grandmother will know you as one of her own. And you will find your way to the night paths, places no other might follow. No mortal, no leech, no cousin, no sorcerer.
Asher looks to Aer and says, "You are the head of our family. It is your choice. I will abide with whatever you choose."
This seems to be a place where we are more open to speak freely than where we stay presently and live our day-to-day lives. So, abandoning our home only concedes to defeat. That I can't do either.
Angrim steps forward and he says, "One doesn't need to abandon it to leave it." He gestures to the man with the golden eyes and he says, "One by night, one by day." One does not live in the street of the community they are in, but they are still part of that community. But they return to a safe haven to rest at night. They have their own place they call home, but they're still part of the greater community. Return to the sept as much as you wish. Use this as your shelter, your bolt hole, your sanctum, your home. Be a part of that sept. But live in the place where you're safe.
This makes a lot of sense. This is, too, a place of power. And
It would
so
be
we cannot speak freely there as we can here, but they have their own eyes watching.
yes, and certainly the surges are always watching me, watching every action I take as I learn my craft, telling me what is acceptable and what isn't. It would be beneficial to me if I had somewhere to work away from their eyes.
I think you have your answer then.
The wolf-eyed man says, "My brother was Sigurd Thorson. His sons and daughters all took the last name. Sigurdsson was Sigurd's daughter, as was tradition. After them, the name never changed again. I am Gunnar Thorson, and in this place, legacy and family matter more than what moon you were born under, what shape your power takes, or how you serve the gods. I have spoken with others who touch the spirit worlds, like you do, young Astrid. Perhaps not all of them follow our gods, but they follow the same ways. And while they do not have the blood of our lineage, or the blood of Fenris in them, they have knowledge, and they have their own forms of power. These people I can introduce you to as well.
That would be wonderful, she says with some degree of hesitation in her voice, and then bows her head and says, "Great uncle."
In this place hides other residents, other hidden secrets. One of your cousins, another who will never change, but he carries the blood of the Svartalfs in him. A craftsman, and he is touched by one of the fair folk, but one of our own lands. Not one of the Celt, not one of the Gaelic. A fae from our own realms. He too lives here. There are others, cousins, aunts, uncles, who may have no ability beyond that which they hone in the mundane world. But they too come here. While the two of you are here, you are not alone. And indeed, there are even other Get, other true-born Guru, who over the generations have found their way back, who stand with the children of Sigurd, and who believe in that same vision that my brother once believed in. While they may not come from his lineage, they too are a part of this prophecy and legacy. For a Jarl, man or woman, night or day, if he or she stands alone, is no more than any other. To be a Jarl, one must have clan and tribe, must have those who stand with them and behind them and support them. Tonight we will get those things you need. Any belongings either of you wish. Should you choose to stay here, we will retrieve them. And I personally will bring you back here that you might rest. And I will share with you tales of our family and our lineage. Tales of my brother, tales of my mother when we were children. And when you are ready to rest, you will rest here, safe in the embrace of Grandmother Night. Should you wish not to reside here, I will escort you wherever it is you wish to go. I will not force anyone to be a part of something they don't wish to pursue.
Ashley is already sort of committed to doing whatever Air decides to do, so.
We can lay our heads down here safely and talk here safely. We can still be a part of what's going on there and keep an eye on those who would look to see us fail and fall.
I agree.
Here,
And
we have
whatever
the
he
tools
is,
to try to succeed on our own.
yes. And whatever he may be, he is family. And we should always trust family.
Gunnar
Never our
pulls up
brother
the
and
sword.
enemy.
And he says, I will show you camp, and Angrim will get an area of our camp settled for you while we go retrieve your belongings. He turns and he walks away from the fire. And as he does, he holds up one hand. And as he makes a fist, the fire goes out.
Neat.
Astrid seems surprised.
And he'll lead you guys back a little ways. When he called it a camp, it's definitely a camp, although you can tell it's set up somewhat permanently. Small huts have been set up, but they're made very traditionally. There are those who are living in fur and hide tents.
I can dig it.
There's a kind of a common mess hall area. You see people walking. There's some who are in blue jeans and button-up shirts, and a couple of them kind of whisper and talk. And a smaller guru, relatively small, walks up, and Krynos, and he's gray. And he says, Jarl Gunnar, are they the ones? He kind of nods his head. And he says, I shall spread word. We will ready a feast.
Eric kind of looks down at the little guru, little Grynos guru. When you say little, is it childlike or is it just like short?
Like 12, 13.
Okay, so just short.
Yeah, relative, not like child, but
Right. So
quite newly changed and almost an early changer.
yeah.
And he turns and says, do either of you have a preference of foods?
If there's food, I'll eat it. That's my preference. She looks at Astrid. What about you, sister?
I have no restrictions.
See, we aren't that difficult.
He chuckles and he says, it seems not. Well, I suppose then the next step. He chuckles and he says, yes, I suppose this one will be a fun one. He chuckles again and he stands his sword in the ground, hangs the sheath from the hilt, and he hangs his cloak from it. As he does, that's when you notice that it is a jet black Rhino's pelt.
If I dare ask.
He chuckles and says, I find a particular level of irony that it was the Shadow Lord whose parents could not follow the edicts and bred who dealt my brother the final blow, killing him because he refused to follow the rules. So I returned the favor.
Well, I mean, fair is fair.
They've lived 700 years. In that time, one guru that I killed, knowing they still stood on the side of Gaia. It's the same one that has hung on my back since the day he died. It's not an easy choice to kill one of your own. And whatever else I may be, I am still kin. But he killed my brother.
I understand. I may be weaker than any Daru, but if one happened to kill my sister, or even my brother for that matter, I would find a way to repay the favor.
Yeah, that's for damn sure.
He says, Angrim will at least have simple tents set up for you when you return. You can, of course, modify, expand, or establish whatever you wish long term, but it will be sufficient for the evening. Should you need assistance, he's a skilled healer and herbalist as well. Makes a fantastic honey wine. In fact, I'm sure they'll have some tonight.
She smiles but thinks to herself, remember what happened the last time you drank.
He turns and says, we'll go this way. There's a place here within. A place I've marked over the years. It is a magic and a method that was stolen from another in a faraway land. The one who stole it taunted me with that knowledge, until the day I drank his soul dry and claimed it for myself. These places of power, this one, the sept on which you reside, they're built around cairns, around these well springs of energy. Sometimes it's just a wellspring, other times a spirit claims it and it becomes a true cairn. But between them all, webs, these threads. And he kind of smiles, a little half smile, and he points at Astrid and he says, and you know well that we can manipulate threads.
I do.
Some cultures also call them dragon tracks.
Dragon tracks. She raises an eyebrow.
And we too know that the dragons exist. Jormungandr, Nidogger, they are true beings. And if they have left tracks, if they have spun threads, we can follow them and manipulate them. I'm not foolish enough to follow this thread into the sept. For while the sept patron spirit is still of the get, she was forced to choose and accept those who are non-get as leaders, because to do anything else would be to watch her own sept fall. And the Lady Winter, she is shrewd and prudent.
Too.
She is shrewd and prudent. Driven by cold logic, she knew she should accept them because it was her best option at the time, and I will not intrude upon her realm. Because while you may come and go, the second my foot touched her sept, she would know that the Night Jarl, the wolf-eyed one, still walks. She would feel grandmother's touch upon me. For while grandmother might mark you, she has reached deep within me and held on. We will not taunt the Lady of the Winter tonight, nor will we draw undue attention. And he casually, you'll notice he grows one claw, uses it to cut his other palm, and he runs his hand down the trunk of this oak that has a number of runes carved into it, carved so many times that they've scarred the bark. As he runs his hand over the runes, they'll start to glow faintly.
Air kind of she's looking at the runes, trying to see figure out what they like Norse runes, or are they something else?
They appear to be modified Norse runes.
Okay, can she try to make out what they are if they're modified?
Yeah, let me.
Astrid would be doing the same thing.
Intelligence occult or intelligence academics, whichever is higher.
Okay, let me see my sheet.
Or
If it ever
enigma.
comes up now, it's gonna play games.
For Astrid, that will be intelligence occult. Intuition will apply.
You said enigmas or occult?
Or academics.
We're gonna roll enigmas, I think. Either way, it's pretty much the same thing, so. Two successes.
All right, 2 successes. You would recognize some sort of influences, almost a Celtic Gaelic, similar to the woads you saw used by the Fianna. Kind of worked into the runes instead of clean straight line runes like you typically would see. There's also components of Guru glyphs to them. Astrid, you had 4 successes. You recognize that each one is also multiple runes interlocked in a very Eastern Oriental fashion, like some kanji often do.
Okay.
But ultimately, what it is a combination, and you're able to. Both of you can recognize elements of night, shadow, and the umbra, symbols representing them. Astrid, you would recognize a little more clearly. It almost looks like a medieval keystone would be, giving directions, as well as serving as a gateway. So it seems to be a gateway accessing these paths, as well as an almost address on these paths. And you guys, he reaches his hands back, holds his hands out, and he says, "Take hold, and we will walk a path of dragons."
Astrid takes his hand.
Air takes the other.
And you guys feel yourself pulled Air would recognize it more as stepping into the Umbra, very similar to that. Astrid, you felt something similar once when you when you first awakened, but it's not quite the same thing either. There's more spiritualism to it, and you feel yourself drawn along. And then you kind of feel the same experience as you step out. You recognize you're at the edge of the bond to the sept. And he says, I will wait here for you. Gather what you need. Let us be quick, and we will return to a happier place.
Advise staying out of sight should the warders and the guardians be.
And Gunnar says, remember, you still bear the touch of the Night Mother. Be swift and silent, and none will know you. We're even there.
So,
Alright, so where are we in the city compared to the Sept? At the Sept of the Frozen Forest?
Yeah, you're right at the end of it, so.
Yeah, I mean, but this is a different forest than the other Sept, right?
Correct. This is the Sept that you guys grew up on, that you're at the edge of.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he jumped you guys basically right
To
Right
it.
back.
Yeah,
right to it. Yeah.
I gotcha. She turns to her sister and says, there are only a few things I need. I will be as quick as I can. But
I've got a few things to grab too.
there is one very large item I would wish to bring. I'm not sure how we would transport it.
What is it?
My loom.
Oh my. Huh.
Perhaps I must leave it. Maybe I can build another.
Is it important?
The object itself is of no particular significance, but what I do with it is.
Is there a way to take it apart and put it back together?
I've never done it, but perhaps.
Well, we'll have to take a look and see.
Gunnar says, would perhaps the loom that has been used by 4 other family generations serve your purposes?
I'm sure it would.
When we return, I will see to it that it is moved nearer to your camp.
Thank you.
Problem solved. Thank you.
My brother's granddaughter built it herself. And while her husband was a skilled craftsman, she insisted he teach her the ways of carpentry rather than build it for her. I remember the day he told her that carpentry was the man's work. I remember the night he slept in my tent as well.
I will be honored to use it. Having something that belonged to my family will certainly make my craft that much more special.
Excellent. Well, if that is solved, then, should you need anything else from me, I will remain here.
So Astrid sets off through the steps back towards her apartment.
As well, Air get her few belongings.
So if they made it to the apartment unhosted, Astrid will get a suitcase, pack a couple of outfits, particularly her ritual dress and her spindle whorl and all of her other photo, except for the loom she
Okay.
leaves behind. So she basically has um, one large suitcase, I'd say, and probably like a duffel bag.
Okay.
Air pretty much has a backpack with a couple change of clothes. She's got a few a lighter, some pens, notepad. She's pretty much got a phone and a bus pass. There is a mundane knife. Looks like a ritual knife type deal
Okay.
that she puts in the bag. And that's pretty much what she's got. She pretty much feels like she's anything else is all on her.
Astrid slings the bag over her shoulder and carries the suitcase with two hands, obviously struggling slightly, but
Air kind of slings the backpack over her shoulders. You don't travel light, do ya? She teases her. She's teasing her.
well, I haven't really been living my life on the road like you have.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. They like to bounce me all over the place like I'm some kind of ball or something, you know?
So she takes one last wistful look around and heads out the door.
Air kind of closes the door and follows. She's very caught. She's kind of watching on her way out,
Mm-hmm.
making sure no one's around.
Astrid is trying to be as graceful as she can be, carrying a heavy suitcase. Um, but she's probably a little louder than she would like to be.
He and you guys get back relatively quickly to Gunner, and he says, This would be why we are using the tracks in the ways. Following the threads is quicker and less conspicuous.
She looks a little out of breath now from carrying the suitcase and says,
Carry the bag.
"Would you mind?"
She just kind of picks up the suitcase.
She straightens her back. Looks a little embarrassed, but
Oh, what did you put in here? Everything but the kitchen sink?
no, I brought the kitchen sink.
Sweet
Don't
Gaia.
worry.
Shall we get out of here?
He turns and says, "Indeed." He puts one hand on each of your backs and almost like a gentle push as he steps forward. Then you guys again feel the pull back to the sept.
Tell you what, I gotta learn to travel like that. That's much faster.
He says, "There are indeed advantages." He tilts his head back and sniffs and he says, "But come, I smell a feast."
We put her giant bag somewhere first.
When Astrid sees her sister eager to put down her suitcase, she laughs and pokes her in the side. "I guess your wolf arms aren't so strong now, are they?"
I mean, I'd rather have my arms free. I don't know why they need to be free yet, but carrying a suitcase all night isn't ideal.
He as you guys approach, he gestures to two smaller hide tents. They're set back enough to be private. And you'll notice that the entrances kind of face each other, but face away from the main camp, so you guys have some privacy to come and go as well.
Okay.
And he says, "I see Engram has set up accommodations for you. This is good. I will have him move the loom as well." And then he takes another sniff and he says, "But it seems that either he or his cousin Marcus was busy, because I smell fish of a quality that one does not come by easily." He smirks and he says, "Which means before we feast and relax for the night, Astrid, I must introduce you to one of the Finnish cousins."
She tilts her head and says, "Oh," inquisitively. She puts down her duffel bag next to the suitcase.
And he has just the faintest blood of the Gator Fenris to him, of the tribe. But he touches the spiritual realm with such intricacy. A magic built around not threads, but the knots that they can be tied into. And he follows animal spirits in a way unlike the way the tribe does. And he'll lead you to a young gentleman. Nice looking fellow, just in a fairly plain shirt, heavier pants, and kind of has the scent of like sea salt to him as you can approach, almost a little bit of brine to him. And he turns around with a big grin on his face and he says, "Gunnar, it is so good to see you. Marcus came to fetch me. He told me we were having a feast. He told me that Angrim, of course, was breaking out the mead, which meant I had no choice. I had to come. Because as much as I might like my vodka and sati, Angrim's mead, especially to have him break out a reserve cask, I had no choice, Connor. You had me hook, line, and sinker, they say. So here I am. And I brought fish. I've already got half of it grilled and smoked. And I will apologize, I may have a portion of that eaten already."
Astrid laughs.
It's only meaning the hungry you I wait.
I have tied knots for good health, for tirelessness. Gunnar, you're in for one hell of a night because, drunk as I can get, I won't get hung over. And he lets out this big laugh, just booming. And he says, "And you'll be going to sleep before I am. If we're going to have a celebration, let's celebrate. I tell you what, I got the vodka if you need it, Gunnar. I know sometimes that honey wine, it's a little mild for you, so. But my apologies, where are my manners? I'm Tumo. Tumo Sumonen. We'll stick to Tumo, it's a mouthful, I understand."
She smiles and says, "It's not that much of a mouthful. I am Astrid Siderson."
Here, Sigurdsson.
Well, I always say we built our magic into our knots, but we built our language. We built the knots right into it. I think that's why we drink so much vodka, to understand one another. Or to get drunk enough so we don't need to.
I don't hold my liquor very well. And I tend to embarrass myself when I'm drunk.
He chuckles. He says, I don't hold it at all. I set empty bottles everywhere.
She laughs.
I don't think you have anything to worry about drinking here, little sister. She gives her a pat on the back. It's not so heavy as to like knock her over, but it's heavy.
He kind of, Tumo kind of leads towards you, Astrid, and he puts one hand up and he says, if you don't mind, I can perhaps assist that you might be able to enjoy the full experience of the evening without the repercussions.
She toss her head and says, what do you have in mind?
Well, it's a little bit I worked up myself. And he kind of runs one hand over his ear, and you'll notice a braid hanging there, and he says, a simple weave and knot, but it calls upon the spirit of a fish, the spirit of the grain, to give life and good health despite imbibing. I've made a couple different variations. Some can prevent full drunkenness, some simply, as I prefer to, just prevent the hangover. I like to get the full experience without the experience of the morning after.
Nobody
But
likes
I've used it, indeed, I've used it to induce complete sobriety in someone who is drinking, although why someone would want such a thing, I have no idea.
She diddles.
But, as I said, there are degrees if you wish to experience only the slightest warmth of the mead. That can be done as well.
I think that would be best, because I would prefer to keep my clothes on in the presence of relative strangers.
He chuckles, and as he begins to chant slightly and braid a portion of your hair just in front of your ear, he says, yes, that's probably for the best. Drunken antics without clothes can get a little bit hectic, especially at a gathering with long lost family. Who knows who's who? That's not a conversation you want to have at a reunion.
She laughs. No, certainly not.
He says, as he continues to weave, he says, in my experience, working with weaves and threads, especially something such as this, it's a matter of degree of intent as well. I can use the same knot for a slight breeze or a raging storm. Depending how tightly it's woven and how quickly I release it.
Her eyes light up, and she seems quite curious. I use weaving as an art form for my own work as well.
As he finishes braiding your hair, he rolls up one sleeve, and you can see there's a pattern of knots that's actually tattooed into his skin. And he says, I did these myself. These were some of my first works, and while they may not be the most efficient, I am rather attached to them. And he says it almost straight face, and then he chuckles and he says, I guess maybe they're attached to me. It's hard to say. But I used thread soaked in ink, woven through my own skin to craft these.
She looks at the tattoo carefully, uh, moves her hand as if to touch it, but then before she does, pulls it back and looks up at him and says, "I'm sorry."
He'll take your hand kind of by the wrist and run your fingers over it, and he says, "I don't mind one bit. I see them every day. They become normal to me. It's nice to see someone recognize them for the first time and experience them for the first time." He says there's a variety here. Some of them are based off simple sailing knots, the kind I use every day out on my fishing boat. Some of them are more ornate, some taught by my mother, who wove baskets and nets.
And what purpose do these knots serve for you?
In my first experience, the first time, I was perhaps too young even. I had found some fine threads. Not enough to do anything with, but enough that I was curious. And I began to tie them in first in simple bows, but that became too easy, and I tied them in knots around my fingers, interwoven. You see kids these days with the strings in the fingers like that, only far more elaborate. Not realizing what I was doing, but I began to see different shapes in the knots and how I could manipulate and warp and change the knots, even if I never untied it. And as I did this, I cast myself into the realm of spirits. However, more frighteningly, I cast myself to the lower realms. Place
The
in our
lower
culture
realms.
where the spirits of the dead go. And while many of them go there willingly and accept their journey, others resist and fight back and seek to claw their way back to our world, dragging others down or climbing upon the backs of others. And I found myself being pulled away from my body by one of these spirits, these restless spirits, who sought to climb into my mortal form, my being, because he had decided he wasn't ready to move forward. And I took the knots, and as I began to twist and even unwind them, I wound them instead around him, casting him deeper. But it frightened me enough that these knots on my arm, they bind this body to me, and they bind me to this body. They prevent forms of intrusion. They prevent forms of possession. While the animal spirits can be invited to ride my body, they cannot control it. And the spirits of other men cannot even ride me. It is a anchor of sorts, a tether that I wove. And while it might be a little bit crude, I could certainly do a finer, more delicate work now, I've kept it because it is indeed was my first work on my return, my first deliberate work at all. And as I said, I'm rather attached to it. Gunnar told me if I ever wish it removed, he'd take care of it for me, but
She smiles and says, "It is beautiful, all the same. I myself have experience with the restless dead. Before it became obvious that I would not change, the dead began to visit me quite frequently. I find often they are just looking for company.
it is an experience which others cannot understand if they have not shared it. To speak with those who have gone beyond. And I think it's a conversation that we can certainly share our experiences further. However,
So,
in my days, I have discovered that revelry and somber intellectual discussion rarely mix.
she
And
laughs.
as a point of full disclosure, I have already pilfered one bottle of Angram's mead when he wasn't looking, as well as eaten 2 fish, a number of potatoes, some rice, and other assorted sundries, including some fine chocolates. Not sure who made them. I didn't bother reading. Sometimes the Dutch, sometimes the Germans. They all like to claim they know how to cook. None of them are French, so they stick to desserts. But I'm afraid that the chocolates may have also been laced with spirits of their own, so to speak. And thus, while I'm happy to share my experiences, I think for us to truly get the most out of this conversation, we should continue it another time and instead enjoy lighter company.
She smiles and touches him lightly on the shoulder and says, "You are quite right. There is plenty of time for that. Lead the way."
He gestures and he says, "Well, here, let me. Gunnar, why don't you go find a chair to sit down in? You've been standing for 700 years. You're the Jarl. You don't have to micromanage everything. I'll show our guests around a little bit." Why don't I introduce him to Marcus, then we'll come back. I'll bring you some food. I don't want you to have to dodder all the way up there. I'll bring you a plate. We'll bring you a horn. I'll introduce him to Marcus, and then we can all sit down, relax, get to know each other a little better. Not too well. It is a family get-together, Astrid.
She laughs
And he chuckles and
and blushes slightly.
he chuckles again, leads the way towards where they're cooking, and he says, This one's taken a more modern name, but he's another whole different lineage. I'm not even sure where Gunnar rounded him up, but let me introduce you to Mr. Marcus Steele. He says Marcus here is a Geta Fenris. However, he's got a unfortunate requirement. You see, he's literally bloodthirsty. Marcus, don't take it personal. Very, very nice man, but he quite literally craves blood. And it's been discovered. Well, they think it might be a hereditary thing. His mother and his father were both, well, you know, they walked on both sides, if you will, and decided that they, well, I don't know, maybe they went to a family get-together and had a few too many drinks. Who knows? But whatever the case may be, they reproduced when they weren't supposed to. And, well, seems like
There's a lot of that going around here, it seems like.
Well, Marcus is and I hate the term, but I realize it's the accepted term. Marcus is the one metis in the area that has come here in. His bloodthirst kind of left him to wander alone from his tribe and sept. Gunnar encountered him following the sign. You leave a pretty big trail when you have a literal bloodthirst.
I can imagine.
And they discovered that, well, Gunnar's blood, whether it's because of his being touched by a leech, because of being touched by not, or because of the sheer potency of it as a 700-year-old kinfolk of extremely good breeding, sates Marcus's needs a bit better, and he doesn't have to drink as continuously. So Marcus, in return for helping control his bloodthirst, stays here and aids and abets, so to speak. And that would be Marcus Steele. And he says, yeah, good evening to you. Kumo, as usual, I hear is getting long-winded. Then he looks and he goes, Kumo, I know you've got your tireless knot going. And I've told you before, you don't need to apply your magic for tirelessness to your tongue. You seem to have gotten a pretty thorough overview already, but yep, I'm Marcus Steele. As mentioned, Gunnar helps me with a particular malady. He's also been more accepting of what I am. Some of those, especially the older traditionalists, frown upon it.
It's true.
Gunnar might keep me around because I can outthrow him, whether it's hatchets, spears, or knives. I think he's got to prove he can beat me before he can show me up. You know, got to tolerate me so he can try and learn my secret. But I'm a relatively straightforward fellow. I reside here. Grandmother's welcomed me. I like to hunt. I like to swim. I like to have a good time within reason.
Don't we all?
Almost without thinking, Astrid says, "You don't look like the Métis to me," and then immediately regrets saying it.
He chuckles. He says, well, the way I see it, I'm living in a park with a 700-year-old man that has the blood of werewolves in his lineage and drinks literal blood as a meal. It's really not hard to blend in when that's your next nearest standard.
She laughs slightly. I suppose not.
Touche.
Oh, I spent a lot of time alone, which means learning to survive, and learning to survive in the everyday world means learning to blend in. So I've done so. That, and I like a good prank every now and again. But I gathered you didn't come over here just to sit and gab. I've got grab a plate, grab some food. There's plenty of drinking horns to go around. We've got Angram's mead out. Tumo brought his homemade vodka and some sati. It's a relatively potent beer from Finland. He brought the recipe, or his family brought the recipe. He's got this other stuff. It's like that Jägermeister, but not quite as hard on the heartburn. Better flavor, true anise flavor. I wouldn't drink a whole glass, but if you're feeling adventurous, it's good for a shot or two. We do have a freshwater spring here in the camp, so I do have fresh spring water if that's your thing.
Astrid touches at the braid that Tumo made in her hair, tucking it behind her ear, and thinking to herself, this better work. She sits down and makes herself a plate and pours herself some of the honey wine.
Yeah.
She eats, she drinks.
Here we'll hunt down some food and have lots of mead.
Marcus says, well, we can probably grab a table over by Gunner. I'm sure he's going to want to start reminiscing pretty soon. He's always good for a story or two.
Anything to reminisce about, does he, being 700 years old?
Well, he's always got some good stories. I'll give him credit for that. On top of that, I saw Tumo egging him on, so now he's going to do it just to prove a point. And so I'm going to head over. You're welcome to join us over there, I'm sure. But I plan to eat, to drink, and then to sleep.
So Astrid gets up and joins them over by dinner.
Yep.
And Gunner's he's not telling any real serious, heavy stories. He's telling lighthearted stories. Tells one about drinking an Irishman under a table.
Oh, I'm sure the Fiona will love that. Would love that story. Take it as a challenge.
He tells a couple other ones of his journeys. He's from here, but he has taken trips to the various British Isles, up to the Norwegian peninsula,
Yeah.
further into Germany as well. And he'll basically just eat, drink, and chat with you guys till you're ready to head to bed for the night. So if you guys have anything specific you want to ask him or Marcus or Tumo, otherwise we can kind of wrap it up there with you guys feasting and then heading to bed.
Yeah, I think Astrid would not want to ask anything too deep. She would just eat and drink and hopefully not get drunk.
Right? Eat, drink, socialize.
And Astrid won't have any. She'll feel that just the slight warmth and tingle, but she doesn't even, not even to the point of a full buzz. So, all right. Well, you guys are able to enjoy the evening and then retire. Angrim set you guys up with pretty good sized hide tents. They clearly they're fairly weather tight, and there's also a bedroll in each of them. They would inform you that once you decide more permanent residence, they can get mattresses, modern beds, whatever you prefer there. Most people just use some sort of feather or straw mattress, but options exist. And he will wish both of you a good night. Tell you guys it was a pleasure to meet both of you.
Pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you too.
All right. And then we will wrap it up there. This has been another introductory scene for the Nightfall in Amsterdam, as we met both Astrid and Air, as well as met some of the other figures of the city, including the Mage Tumo, the Guru Marcus, the Kinfolk Angrim, and the Kinfolk Vampire Gunner. So thank you players for playing and watchers for watching. We hope everyone has a good evening. We'll see you again soon.